Hello, my Sabbath school teachers and friends. Been thinking about Sabbath school lately. We have Messiah's Mansion coming up right around the corner, and we've been discussing about how are we going to do follow-up. There will probably be hundreds of people with an interest in studying further about the Messiah's Mansion, about the Old Testament, and specifically about the sanctuary and how all of that plays into our faith today. I believe Sabbath school could be a very vital place for our members and for our new visitors to begin to learn and to grow in their understanding. So as we're thinking about Sabbath school, I have a little slideshow I want to share with you here. Let's see if we can get it going. All right. Okay. There we go. So thinking about Sabbath school is really one of the most long-lasting aspects of the Seventh Adventist Church. But according to a Barna study about 20 years ago, Adventists, when they're compared to all the other religions like Episcopalians, Presbyterians, Baptists, Methodists, Lutherans, Catholics, Pentecostal, Assembly of God, so forth. There's lists of probably 60 churches and denominations. We come in about number 10 as far as attendance. Our people are not attending as well as the, let's say, the Pentecostals or the Assemblies of God or even the Baptists. We're in place number 7 as far as Bible study. Our people are not leading the way in any of these areas as far as the denominations go. We are not leading the way in attendance, in Bible study, in prayer, or in voluntary work. We're number 12 in the position of the various denominations. Catholics beat us out in the area of prayer. And I think it's the other group, the Pentecostals and so forth. But you can see there's a lot of room for growth. We need to provide growth for our church members. For some reason, it looks like once we baptize our people, they coast on their experience from that point forward. Now, there's a ratio that's needed for our members to stay active. There's the friendship factor. There's a 1-to-7 ratio, according to the people that study how people become active in their organization. Each new member should have a minimum of 7 new friends in the church within the first 6 months. I don't know if we've been able to accomplish that, but through Sabbath school small groups, I believe we could. Members group involvement, the 75 to 100 ratio. 75 of every 100 church members should be involved in a group. As it stands currently, I counted about 54 people in our Sabbath school classes. We have 4 in the fellowship hall. We have 2 in the sanctuary. Add all of those up, we had about 54 people attending. We're having about 200 people attending our worship service. So that's not the 75% rule yet. We're at about 25%. We can do a lot better than that. The new member group involvement, 9 to 10 ratio. 9 of every 10 new members should be involved in a small group. You can see we've got a lot of development we need to do catch up with. So when we're thinking about our Sabbath school, it really hinges on our Sabbath school teachers. So teachers don't feel too much pressure here, but really a teacher is not just an instructor. A teacher is more than that. He's a shepherd of a group of people, and what we're calling our Sabbath school small groups. That's your group of people that you're shepherding. You're basically the pastor's extension. You're helping me pastor those 6 to 8 people that are in your group. So you are also a person for them to emulate. In other words, to copy. Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ, to his followers. A teacher is a feeder of hungry sheep. The members that come to your class, they come hungry every Sabbath morning. And depending on what they experience in your class, depends on how they're going to feed the rest of the week. You're also a protector of the sheep. We want to stay clear of false doctrine, of false notions, and old wives' tales. We want to clear those out. So a teacher is all of these things. I added two other items here. By the way, I got this presentation from the North American Division. I put there that the teacher needs to know their class by name and phone number. The reason I say phone number, because you need to be able to keep in touch with your class through texting. Texting is my favorite way because people don't have to immediately respond to it, but sooner or later, they're going to see that you sent a text and that you cared enough to talk to them and to communicate with them. So as teachers, let's pastor our small group classes. We talked about this in our last board meeting, but the first 15 minutes, and by the way, when does class start? We've been reporting it starts at 9:45. According to the NAD, North American Division, Sabbath school is 1 hour. So from 9:45 to 10:45 is your time. If you want to get a head start, some people are coming at 9:30, but make an agreement with your class. Are we going to start at 9:30 or are we going to start at 9:45? Don't leave that slag time just for people to kind of slurp into their class anytime between 9:30 and 10. Make a clear beginning for your class time. But the first 15 minutes, if you only have two people there, it's not going to do much good. But don't underestimate the power of the story. Ask the icebreaker questions. Here's three of them I like to use. What close call have you had in the past? Can you describe it? Or how has your birth order affected you? How many foreign countries have you visited? Which one stands out in your memory? These are just ways for people to talk and get acquainted, and you'll be surprised how that sticks in your memory, and you'll remember that person a lot more. The second part of your first 15 minutes, plan an outing. Elect somebody to be a secretary in your class and begin to invite your friends and family to an outing. Plan a time out at the park, a time at somebody's home, but enjoy getting to know each other around a small meal, maybe a sack lunch. Plan to visit nursing home or go feed the immigrants. I can hook you up with the Sacred Heart Church. They're always looking for volunteers down there. Hand out invitations to Messiah Mansion. The next 3 weekends is really vital. We get our people invited to Messiah Mansion. Be creative. Spend a little time with your Sabbath school small group doing something to outreach. The third part of the first 15 minutes, make sure you do roll call. Ask who's missing and who you need to reach out to that maybe was there last week or the last month that didn't show up again, and what else you should be doing as a group. So use those first 15 minutes, but make sure you're getting your class there at the right time, either 9:30 or 9:45. From our testimonies to the church, Sister White says there's much to be done in the Sabbath school work in bringing the people to realize their obligation, act their part. God calls them to work for him, and the ministers should guide their effort. Wise counsel, once again. The North American Division has set out 4 objectives for our Sabbath school. Sabbath school number 1 should be to Bible study. Secondly, for fellowship. Isn't that interesting? Bible study and fellowship, primary reasons for our Sabbath school class. And that fades away when you have a class of 12, 14, 20 people. You cannot fellowship with that many people. It's just impossible. So we really need to concentrate on keeping our class size down to 8. 6 or 8 is perfect. 10 is getting a little uncomfortable. 12 is too many. We need to start a second class if we're at the 12. And I think we already have one in the 12 range. So community outreach and world mission, those are the 4 areas North American Division's recommending our Sabbath school classes concentrate on. Another quote from evangelism: the formation of small companies as a basis of Christian effort is a plan that has been presented before me by one, capital O, who cannot err. If there's a large number in the church, let the members be formed into small companies to work not only for the church members, but for the unbelievers. So there you are, friends, straight from the prophet. We need to follow her advice and break into smaller groups. Amen. So here's some recommendations. Give your class a name. I think we've already done that, but let's remind our class, we're the class of Noah, we're the class of Esther. I don't remember what the other names are, but remind your class you have a name, you have an identity, you are a identified group. Have a prayer meeting, have some member open up your home for prayer meeting, have a class project. Sometime this summer, you ought to have a project to do something. Begin a class newsletter. That's for the energetic ones. Include statistics about who comes to class and how many studied their lesson, how many did outreach, like we used to do in Sabbath school. Name your visitors, get acquainted with new people, and a message from the teacher. That you're the pastor, teacher. You're the pastor of that group. What are you going to do to help them stick together and to grow? That's the question. So remember, when you're teaching, 10% of what they read is remembered. 20% of what they hear is remembered. 30% of what they see is remembered. 50% of what they hear and see is remembered. But look at this, 70% of what they say is remembered, and 90% of what they say and do is remembered. So we need to have classes that have saying and doing. Each member of the class needs to say and do some aspect of that lesson that's going to help it lodge into their mind to be a practical application for the rest of the week. Remember, they may not have another spiritual conviction the rest of the week. This is their opportunity to put it in their mind and to go forward with an action plan. Did you know that Jesus asked 339 questions in the first four Gospels? Is that a surprise? It's a surprise to me when I learned that number. 339 questions Jesus asked. Why was he always asking questions? Well, here's one of the reasons. John 2 and verse 25 said Jesus knew what was in man. Well, if he knew what was in man, why was he asking so many questions? He should have just told them what the truth was. I believe Jesus was much more wise than that. He knew that the power of questions brought to the cognitive reasoning part of the mind, not just the memory part, but the cognitive reasoning, the action part of the mind, so that it became reality for the listener. Not just itching the ears, but moving the heart and then the hand and the feet. So here's perhaps why he asked so many questions. Think about this. Can you engage somebody if you're just talking? You ever walked into a conversation and they're already talking and you trying to catch up to understand what are they saying, and they never involve you, they just keep talking? Unless there's a question, you're not involved in the conversation. So that's the one way Jesus got into the conversation. Questions build relationships. I didn't know that Cesar had his foot severed in a work accident. Now, these are strange little things that I remember, but I have now a keen remembrance of Caesar, and you do as well in your class. And we need to get to know more and more about the peculiar aspects of relationships. Questions force those to interact and have to think. When we're trying to come up with an answer, we're engaging the mind, not just passively listening. So ask questions in your class. It creates conversation. When conversation is when two people are exchanging, not when one person is downloading. That's not a conversation. That's a That's a well, somebody said diarrhea mouth. We don't want to promote that. His listeners were more likely to own their own conclusions. Now that, I believe, was one of the wisest things Jesus did. When somebody comes to their own conclusion, they're going to own it much more than if you impose your idea or your belief on them based on your own conclusions. He sometimes answered questions with questions. He would ask a question and he'd follow it up with another question. So the mind is always being hooked into the conversation through questions. He sometimes asked warm-up questions to get the conversation started. That's what our icebreakers are all about. They're warm-up questions to get people started. So I admonish you, teachers, please ask more questions. Get more people involved so that they can get their minds in the class and in the learning mode. So here's some recommendations. I just put these together. I thought they may be helpful. So ask your group, what did you think? What did you like about this lesson last week? Just start out like that. Yeah, a lot of them will say, well, I didn't study. That'll be a jog memory for them as well. Go into your icebreaker. Everybody has a story. Thirdly, don't give answers. Ask questions that force them to share fresh answers. So if they're always hearing you give the answers, well, they've got answers too, and they're going to remember their answers a lot quicker than they're going to remember yours. Call out the quiet one, the one that's not talking. Just say, well, sister so-and-so. You got to know their names, by the way. What would you say to brother so-and-so's answer? Get them to cross talk at the table, not just from you to them, but across to each other, so that there's more communication. Get them to make a conclusion based on what they've said. So after saying that, sister, what would you say? What would you conclude? So again, you're hooking them in to thinking upon what's being discussed. Sometimes answer questions with questions of your own. It's the way Jesus did it. Use his tactics. Ask warm-up questions to get the conversation started. And we have a whole list of those on the back of your roster, the questions. So that's a short, brief sharing from some North American division and my own interaction with small groups. I hope it's helpful. God bless you in your Sabbath school small groups. Let's work together to revitalize and to firm up new members and to inspire our older members to continue growing and expanding their capacity to learn from God and to share their faith. Praise God.